I like Seattle. I like Pike Place Market and the Space Needle, and being able to walk pretty much anywhere within the urban core. I like the city's food scene, historic streetcar suburbs, plentiful public parks, and collection of coffee shops and small businesses. I also think Seattle has a lot of issues. Cost of living issues, infrastructure issues, cultural, crime, drug, and homelessness issues. This is characteristic of many big cities in the US, but I think Seattle is a uniquely interesting case study for us to dive into today while we explore the city's urban core. This is a city that, from 2010 to 2020, grew by about 23%, the fastest rate of growth among the 50 largest US cities at the time. A population explosion largely thanks to the city's growing tech industry, 0% state income tax status, and beautiful natural scenery. But all of that growth has brought both good and bad. Within the same decade, the city's homeless population rose by 50%, its homicide rate exploded by 174%, and oh yeah, there was that brief civil war up on Capitol Hill too. So I spent a couple weeks in Seattle to really take everything in, seeing what all of this change looks, sounds, and feels like at street level. The dust has seemed to settle in Seattle, and now we get to step back and take a look at what all of the progressive-led development and modernization has done to it. I explored the city on foot, on bike, and on public transit. And you're coming along. You'll experience the beauty, the darkness, and everything twisted up inside the capital of the Pacific Northwest, right here, from Fourth Place. Your place to learn about US geography, urbanism, transportation, and city planning. Seattle is one of the most naturally beautiful big cities in America. Mount Rainier and its foothills as the city's backdrop, the broken-up chain of islands surrounding the city's isthmus, which itself was shaped by glaciers hundreds of thousands of years ago. The trees and the plants glow with an almost otherworldly shade of green. It's a city that's defined, in part, by its wonderfully weird waterways and old-growth greenscapes. There's really no overstating just how scenic this city is. It's the very first thing you notice when you arrive. But Seattle isn't just naturally beautiful. Its beauty can be found within its buildings and its streetscape. Seattle is home to a top 3 American skyline, and you can argue with a wall if you disagree. But the skyscrapers aren't what makes the city's skyline special. It's the urban fabric, left over from its city beautiful and streetcar eras. They're the product of Seattle's early ambition, fueled by gold, fur, timber, and the railroad. You can see that beauty everywhere. Though old, its bones are still very strong. A human-scale streetcar grid, a rare collection of Olmsted parks, situated inside brick-laid blocks built by pioneers with every intention of making their works last generations, which they have in many cases. There's a lot of beauty to go around in Seattle, though I think one of the most beautiful things about the city is its ability to make you want to keep walking and exploring with every new streetcar suburb and neighborhood main street you discover. At least that's what the city has always been like for me. For example, take Ballard Avenue in the neighborhood of Ballard. It's one of my favorite Victorian-era commercial corridors in the city, mostly because of how well preserved it is, while at the same time being so forward-thinking and innovative. When the Main Street thoroughfare was first built in the late 1800s, it looked and felt kinda similar to how it does today. Ballard was actually incorporated as its own city back in 1890, long before annexation into Seattle in 1907. Ballard Avenue was laid out as the commercial spine to that independent city, running parallel to the waterfront and close to the lumber mills and ship docks along Salmon Bay, a natural location for shops, saloons, hotels, and boarding houses that served the workers therein. I mean, just look at this place. It's the quintessential American Main Street, only with a uniquely PNW look, even down to its more modern urban planning overhaul. This part of Ballard wasn't always so pedestrian-friendly, especially in the post-war years. It didn't escape the scourge of car centricity throughout the mid-century, but it's recovered thanks to efforts from local planners and urbanists. I really like the way the city left the brick road infrastructure here as they played around with traffic flow and pedestrianization. Characteristics like this are not only important for history and preservation and for the look of everything, but these brick streets have a unique way of working to slow down drivers just by their nature. Brick roads in 2025 are rare, and they can often be found exclusively within areas of high foot traffic. It's urbanism's way of bringing history and urban planning together to reduce car traffic. Brick streets distinguish people-first places from car-dominated asphalt ones. And that's just one of the many reasons why brick remains superior. Secondly, planners implemented these multi-purpose bollards which add both new greenery and also provide even more signals to drivers to slow down. A fantastic example of tactical urbanism at work. These things are the guardians of the crossings they're placed against, and I love when cities like Seattle know how to use them correctly. Docks, outdoor dining sheds, and the elimination of two-way traffic have all helped to transform Ballard Avenue from a car-centric corridor back to a fairly low-stress environment for pedestrians and cyclists. And if that wasn't good enough already, Ballard might just have the best concentration of highly rated shops and restaurants out of anywhere in the city. I always love grabbing a sushi dinner at Moshi Moshi and getting dessert afterwards at Hotcakes or Nutty Squirrel Gelato. There's so much great coffee, tea, and matcha here too. It's always fantastic to see a commercial corridor with so much occupancy, a sure sign of a thriving neighborhood community. The next door neighborhood of Fremont is also beautiful, and its bones are a bit more industrial than Ballard's, and its character a bit more quirky. A walk along the Fremont Avenue Bridge is an absolute trip. I've really never seen anything like it. It's this beautifully bright blue piece of early 20th century transportation infrastructure, completed in 1917, in order to connect the neighborhood of Queen Anne to the neighborhood of Fremont, both rising streetcar suburbs at the time. A perfectly preserved sliver of Seattle's City Beautiful movement, and a great example of the engineering prowess of the era too. The Aurora Bridge towers over its older sibling, and its hidden gem can be found hiding underneath. You know, much has been said about the Fremont Troll, this massive concrete art piece constructed in 1990. But by the way he's holding that VW, I kinda get the feeling he's tired of cars taking over our cities, just like us. Fremont is full of fun art and quirky sights, and I'll probably get comments if I forget to mention this one. An art piece called Waiting for the Interurban, created in 1978 by artist Richard Bayer, commemorating the Seattle-Everett Interurban line that operated here from 1910 to 1939. It's a cast aluminum sculpture that depicts 6 figures and a dog standing as if at a streetcar stop. Obviously, this streetcar no longer exists over here, but this is still a really cool art piece nonetheless. You just don't see public art like this celebrating the streetcar era often enough. I had a lot of fun walking around the residential hill that makes up the north part of Fremont too, surrounding Fremont Avenue. This part of the neighborhood felt like strolling through a living photo book of early 20th century streetcar suburbia, the kind of place with corner store cafes, craftsman bungalows, and beautifully mature trees. Narrow lots of porches and stoops, with picturesque backdrops up there with some of the best this country can offer. And on this side of Fremont, an older, even tighter community vibe, with tons of local boutiques, coffee shops, and highly rated restaurants finding their home in 100-year-old streetcar commercial buildings. Saw a lot of infill and adaptive reuse as needed, and some new bike lanes too. This was definitely the most Seattle-feeling neighborhood I'd explored thus far, whether up here or down by 36th and Fremont, surrounded by even more local small businesses. Fremont has to be the best neighborhood in the city for vintage shopping, and just third places in general. Also shout out to Local Tide, easily the best quick, cheap bite in the city. Right here in the heart of beautiful Fremont. And don't sleep on Wallingford next door, another streetcar suburb just to Fremont's east, and one where Seattle's symbiotic relationship between its built environment and its natural environment is on full display. Gasworks Park is one of America's best neighborhood green spaces, and I already made a video about it earlier this year, which you can check out down below. In short, Seattle turned an old power plant into a public park, and it's just as cool as you think it is. Gasworks Park is a major point of interest along the Lake Union hike and bike loop, which I actually walked the entire length of, starting at South Lake Union, working my way up West Lake, across the Fremont Bridge, stopping here in Wallingford, continuing down East Lake, and finishing off at the Museum of History and Industry. It's a must-do if you've got the time, and especially with the weather I got lucky with on my visit, I couldn't pass it up. Wallingford is a huge cycling neighborhood, thanks in part to its location along several trails and designated routes. It might be the hottest part of the city right now, at least as far as social media is concerned. Seawolf Bakers is a local favorite with lines out the door no matter what time of day. Same with Old Salt next door, who's serving up the best bagel and lox in Seattle. And look, I could spend all day talking about the small businesses I love up here, but I just can't, so you'll have to check them out for yourself. It's got a little bit of everything, and does it all really well. Wallingford has built itself into one of the most desirable neighborhoods in the city, thanks to the construction of a bunch of mixed-use missing middle, that walkable streetcar-era grid, and all of that aforementioned green space and bike infrastructure. And I do want to take a moment to highlight the fantastic mixed-use urbanism Seattle has built in the last 5 years throughout the city. It might have been the most obvious thing I noticed while walking through all of these neighborhoods. The city's recent zoning overhaul was driven by state-level mandates under Washington's House Bill 1110 that took effect 2 summers ago, which has substantially lowered legal barriers to building more missing middle housing in residential areas previously zoned for single-family detached homes only. That's amazing, and definitely deserves a lot of praise. This probably goes without saying, but Seattle is home to some of the best urban green spaces in the country. And that's thanks in part to the efforts of the world-famous Olmsted brothers at the turn of the 20th century. If you haven't heard of them before, you've definitely visited at least something they had a hand in designing. Most famously, Central Park in New York City, but also the likes of Boston's Back Bay Fens, Chicago's Washington Park, and a whole host of other green spaces and even university campuses across the US. At the city's request, the Olmsteds created their 1903 Olmsted Plan, which laid out a comprehensive park and greenbelt system intended to tie together Seattle's hills, lakes, and shorelines. My favorite Olmsted work in the city has to be Volunteer Park. That Victorian-era city beautiful vision is all over this place. Broad lawns and tree-lined paths bend and wind in a way that pulls you in deeper and deeper. And why would I ever want to leave with views like this? I wandered so deep that I happened to discover this 119-year-old relic, a water tower, a necessity at the time to provide water pressure and storage for the wealthy neighborhood that surrounded it. Why haven't I ever seen a brick-clad water tower before? And can somebody in the comments tell me why it feels like I'm standing inside a fantasy novel when I look at it? But from the water tower, I walked right into Seattle's Millionaire's Row, a stretch of homes along 14th Avenue East, just south of Volunteer Park. I didn't even know that this neighborhood existed prior to me discovering it by accident. Kind of ironic how it's located in Capitol Hill, which, as we'll find out in a second, is a place today known for its infamous riots and anti-establishment sentiment. The street itself is beautiful, again, tree-lined and filled with these massive 20th century mansions. It's kind of funny to keep accidentally stumbling upon these Millionaire's Row type places. Here's my favorite one that I found in Boise, Idaho earlier this year. You can watch that video down below as well. There's also this one I found the other day exploring the small ghost town of Cairo, Illinois. Video on that one coming soon. These places were made up of colonial, Tudor, Victorian, and Italianate homes built by timber and railroad barons, bankers, and industrialists. As I made my way south, I found myself walking along Union Street in Seattle's Central District. A neighborhood harboring a ton of really strong new urbanism, especially at Midtown Square, a 4-building mixed-income redevelopment that encloses an 18,000 square foot public plaza built with permeable, mid-block passages and active ground floors on all sides. The redevelopment brought about somewhere in the ballpark of 432 new homes, stacked over 28,000 square feet of retail space, including a new neighborhood grocery store, coffee and barbershops, and a few other local amenities sprinkled in too. This is all really beautiful new urbanism. To some people, new urbanism might look lifeless or devoid of character, but you can't say that about this place. There's a ton of character to go around inside the Central District. So Seattle is home to some of my favorite streetcar suburbs in America. Ballard, Fremont, Wallingford, but even those I haven't had time to mention in this video, like all of the localized main streets that make up Capitol Hill, or the many main street communities in and around Madison Street, like Madrona, Madison Park, and Madison Valley. Belltown and Uptown are downtown core neighborhoods with tons of entertainment and old industrial adaptive reuse. And the same goes for Sodo and First Hill. And it should be pretty obvious that South Lake Union is deserving of a video all to itself, which is coming very soon. And then there's Pike Place Market. This place is where the city's inheritance of its past is the most obvious, and dare I say, completely worth the hype. If you've been here, you know this isn't just a tourist trap. It can't be if both locals and tourists still love the place. And they do, for many reasons. I visit lots of public markets and food halls on my visits around the country, but let's be honest, they all just want to be Pike Place. But none of them are Pike Place, because this is Pike Place. It's awesome, and it's only getting better, especially as the city continues to experiment with pedestrianization on the actual Pike Place street itself. It looks like all signs point to the street becoming a fully pedestrian zone by 2027, and it's about damn time. Starting in mid-2025, Seattle has begun blocking vehicular pass-throughs and rideshares, and is now only allowing delivery, emergency, and ADA vehicles. This is the first step to full pedestrianization, a natural evolution that would be fantastic for the businesses here. Because, really, who is driving into Pike Place Market? I honestly can't believe it's taken the city this long, because this is, next to the Space Needle, Seattle's premier historic tourist destination, and it's always packed with pedestrians. It's gonna be so nice to give this space back to people on a full-time basis. This new development, along with the recent completion of Overlook Park and the Alaskan Way pedestrian projects, pack a serious urbanist punch, and I just can't wait to see this area continue to improve for people first. There's a dark side to the Emerald City, and unfortunately, it's as obvious as its beauty. But Seattle's dark side isn't just about crime, homelessness, or graffiti, all of which are on the rise, by the way. No, it's more about the contradiction layered within. We are constantly being told that the left are the saviors of our cities, and what our big cities actually need more of is more progressive policy. They say that's what's going to bring back our cities from the dead. My way of thinking about it, it's so clear that the reality is quite the opposite. In fact, it's the very progressiveness of Seattle that has brought about this recent uptick in homelessness and this scourge of criminal activity. Seattle is the quintessential progressive American city. It's got great bones, and liberals have built a lot of great new urbanism. It's just too bad you can't really enjoy it, because most of the city is filthy and overrun with career criminals walking amongst us. And this is not an exaggeration. Walk through the neighborhoods I haven't touched on yet. Downtown Seattle, Pioneer Square, Pike and Pine. You'd love to be able to walk around here without constantly sussing everybody out, but these places just don't feel as safe as they used to, or as they should. Our cities work best with order and pattern and predictability and consequence, not progressive disorder and chaos. That's actually regressive. But that's exactly what much of Seattle's downtown core has become, especially here around Pike and Pine and Capitol Hill. Some of the best small businesses in the city, all within walking and biking distance of each other, and surrounded by great new density. But your safety and security is the lowest priority. There's a high chance you'll be accosted or witness somebody tweaking out by the streetcar station, or on the streetcar itself, or sitting shooting up outside your apartment, or outside your favorite local donut shop. These are all things I experienced while spending some time in Seattle. Now, I'm 25 years old, and I travel the country for a living, so I see a lot, especially within our urban cores. But I'll never forget that Capitol Hill was where I witnessed my first robbery in broad daylight. It was here, inside Chop House Row, a food hall, public market, and mixed-use third place where people come for some respite during their lunch hour or to meet a friend for coffee on the weekend. Some homeless guy ran inside one of these small businesses, grabbed a handful of goods, and with the cashier chasing behind him, ran right past me out the door and back onto the street. After talking to the owner, she was more keen to defend him given his state of being, and decided that was the end of it. Apparently that kind of thing happens all the time around here. It's sad that these people are in the situation they've found themselves in, but it's almost just as sad to see how normalized it is around here. And I don't think that helps anyone in the long term. See, some people might call life in Capitol Hill progressive paradise, where Starbucks stores are closing because baristas decided to unionize like the working in the coal mines, vagrants are allowed to terrorize you on and around public transportation, flailing, yelling, and shooting up, defecating on storefronts, and leaving trash everywhere. So much for saving the environment, I guess. You don't like white flight or gentrification or whatever you want to call it? Then ask yourself why it happened in the first place. This is not the product of racism or bigotry or anything else along those lines. Instead, it's the product of criminal tolerance and negligent enabling, from the people in the community to City Hall and all the way up to the state capitol. But Capitol Hill's problems only started to get national attention in June of 2020. That month, these very streets that you see in front of you became ground zero for nonsensical, radical left-wing violence during the Capitol Hill Occupied Protest, or CHOP, later rebranded to the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or CHAZ. The great leftist war against, well, nothing as it turned out. For a few weeks, the violent leftist dream came true. Armed members of the public barricaded streets, ran the police out of the neighborhood, and proclaimed self-governance in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. And what happened? Not utopia, not peace, just looting, shootings, arson, small businesses destroyed, and residents left traumatized. And yet, 5 years later, Capitol Hill still carries those scars. The riots caused millions of dollars in damage to local businesses and infrastructure, so much so that the residents sued the city for damages, and they actually won compensation. On the surface, today you'll still find coffee shops, bookstores, tree-lined streets, bike lanes, and density. But what you don't see are the many businesses and people that left here after that fateful month, never to return, leaving behind many vacant storefronts that still characterize the neighborhood 5 years later. This kind of leftist-sponsored violence and soft-on-crime policy is terrible for urbanism and city planning. A place with all of the bones and urban energy to succeed, undone by leadership too timid to enforce law and order. And then they wonder why people are calling on the president to intervene at this point. That's why this guy won in a landslide in the first place. We see the shape of our cities and our open borders under progressive leadership, and it's not pretty. And it's this kind of leftist violence that's still terrorizing our cities in 2025. I know because I lived through it. In downtown Los Angeles at the end of 2024 and into this year, we had people destroying private property, vandalizing businesses, and terrorizing the streets of this once great city. They wave Mexican flags proudly while doing everything to prevent themselves from being sent back there after entering this country unlawfully. That's a crime, but these folks feel so entitled to the freedom America offers its lawful citizens that they just straight up destroy the cities that we built to try and prove a point. One illegal immigrant setting a woman on fire on a New York City subway is one too many. One illegal immigrant killing an American with a big rig they shouldn't have been allowed to drive in the first place is one too many. And I could go on and on. True new urbanism simply cannot coexist with progressive policy. You want fair, free public transportation? Just be ready for it to be overrun with crime and homelessness, since it's a free-for-all. You want cities with public squares, bike lanes, and clean streets? Well, you need to remove the people from society who take advantage of them by making them dirty and full of needles. Seattle's Pioneer Square was perhaps the saddest of all the neighborhoods I visited in the city. How they managed to take the birthplace of Seattle and twist it into the city's Skid Row is a crime in and of itself. History tells us this neighborhood is where Seattle put itself on the map, and you can see that all around you. All you have to do is look up. But dare to let your eyes wander down to street level, and you'll see it's a pretty sad state of affairs. It's about time cities start asking themselves why their downtown pedestrian promenades and public squares are ghost towns in the present day. From Boulder to Miami to right here in Seattle. What you see in Pioneer Square isn't wasted potential, it's lost potential. Where 100 years ago, businesses and travelers from all over the world tripped over themselves to be here, now, most days, they can't get far enough. My fantasy is one where Americans can live in walkable, rail-heavy cities, patronizing small businesses, surrounded by community, having a high quality of life, on safe streets and parks full of children playing, and with no tolerance for open-air drug use, crime, or other degeneracy. And that's an America I believe most Americans want to live in. But it's on all of us to make that fantasy a reality. I love Seattle. I only wish Seattle loved Seattle. I'll see you next week from 4th place.